The series begins with two Viking warriors, Ragnar and his brother Rollo, in a fierce battle against a group of enemies on a mountain. It becomes clear that Ragnar is a very strong fighter, and he and his brother manage to defeat all their enemies. Afterwards, Ragnar sees a vision of the god Odin, the god of the Vikings, taking the souls of the Viking warriors who died in the battle. He then ascends with them to the heavens. Ragnar keeps this vision to himself and does not tell his brother Rollo about it. The next day, Ragnar trains his son in the arts of combat. Then, Ragnar prepares his son Bjorn to take him to the celebration held by the Viking king every year. The Viking king's name is Haraldsson. The celebration is held in the main Viking village Kattegat. Lagertha, Ragnar's wife, comes and tells him that Bjorn is still too young to go with him to the celebration. However, Ragnar tells her that Bjorn is 12 years old, which is the right age for him to become a Viking warrior. On their way to the village, Ragnar tells his son what will happen at the celebration. He tells him that King Haraldsson will judge some criminals and then inform them of the raids they will undertake, which will likely be raids on Eastern European countries, as the king has always sent them every year. Ragnar tells his son that he himself wants to go to the countries of the West and raid them. He wants to invade them because he has heard that the Western lands are full of treasures. Meanwhile, Lagertha is at home with her daughter, Gyda. Two bandits attack them, having learned they were alone in the house. Lagertha tells Gyda to go hide. It's clear that Lagertha is a fierce warrior, as she attacks the bandits and finishes them off. The next day, Ragnar and his son arrive at the village of Kattegat. There, they meet Rollo, Ragnar's brother, and they go to the tavern to rest from their journey. Rollo tells Ragnar that Haraldsson will surely send them to the eastern lands, as he does every time. Rollo says that these lands are poor and have nothing to offer. Ragnar seizes the opportunity and tells Rollo about his idea to invade the lands of the West. He tells him that he has heard stories about them and that they are filled with many treasures of gold and silver. Rollo tells him it's difficult to sail the ocean without knowing the way to the West. Ragnar tells him he has something that will let them know their way to the West easily. He shows him a wooden compass he got from a sailor and explains how they will know the direction of the West from the sun's rays. Rollo asks him how they will know the way if the sun is hidden by clouds. Ragnar takes him outside and pulls out a transparent stone from his pocket called a sunstone. He raises it to the sky and is able to determine the sun's location behind the clouds. The next day, all the villagers are gathered in King Haraldsson's hall for the annual celebration. The king and his wife, Siggy, enter. Haraldsson begins by trying the guilty criminals from among the villagers. Afterwards, Bjorn and another child go and swear their loyalty and obedience to the king on a sword. With that, they both become Viking warriors. The king rises to give permission for the celebration to begin, but Ragnar interrupts him and asks where they will fight this year. Haraldsson tells him they will go to the lands of Eastern Europe. Ragnar suggests they go to the West, where they will find many lands filled with riches and spoils. At this, King Haraldsson becomes angry and tells him that he owns the ships and he pays for them, and he alone has the right to say where they will go. Haraldsson tells Ragnar that all the stories he has heard about the lands of the West are just lies. Haraldsson ends his conversation with Ragnar and gives the order for the celebration to begin. Afterwards, Haraldsson sits with Ragnar alone and scolds him for interfering in his affairs. He threatens that if he repeats this, he will confiscate his land and he will be banished from his home and the village. Ragnar listens to him, leaves, and walks away. As soon as he leaves, Haraldsson orders his servant to watch Ragnar because he doesn't trust him at all. At night, Ragnar and his son go to the seer. Ragnar tells him that he wants to know his future from the gods, but he doesn't understand anything the seer says, so he leaves. At the same time, Haraldsson wakes up startled from his sleep because he dreamt of the day he found his two sons murdered and thrown into a pit in the ground. The next day, Ragnar takes his son and they go to meet one of Ragnar's friends named Floki. It turns out that Floki is an expert shipbuilder, and that Ragnar paid all his money to Floki to build him a special strong ship that could withstand his long journey to the treasure-filled lands of the West. Afterwards, Ragnar returns to his village and asks his wife what happened in his absence. She hides the fact that bandits attacked the house and tells him that nothing strange happened while he was away. At night, Rollo asks Ragnar about the ship, and he tells him that Floki is almost finished building it. Rollo asks him how he will gather the men who will be with them on the ship for the journey, especially since most of them will be afraid of King Haraldsson. This means that one of them might betray them and go inform Haraldsson about what happened. Ragnar leaves the house to think about this alone. It appears that Rollo is jealous of his brother Ragnar, as he tries to get close to Lagertha and tells her he loves her. But Lagertha pushes him away and stops him from getting close to her, telling him he will never be a great warrior like his brother. At that moment, Ragnar sees the god Odin before him, who always appears in his imagination. Ragnar returns to his home and tells Rollo and Lagertha that he saw a sign that proves he is on the right path. After a few days, Ragnar and his brother go to Floki, who has finished building the ship. The three of them get on and take a trip on the water. Ragnar, Rollo, and Floki are happy because the ship is ready to sail. At that moment, King Haraldsson's servant is standing far away, watching them. After a few days, Ragnar gathers with a group of Vikings at his friend Eric's house. Eric has chosen a group of Vikings he trusts. Ragnar tells them that he has built a new ship to travel to the lands of the West, specifically to the country of England. He tells them that there will be a lot of plunder waiting for them there, and that the plunder will be divided equally among them all. However, they are very afraid of King Haraldsson because he might kill them. Ragnar convinces them that the treasures they will find in the West are worth risking their lives for. One of them, named Knut, doubts the existence of the lands of the West at all, but Ragnar manages to convince him that they have nothing to lose by trying. All those present agree to be with Ragnar on his journey, and they all swear that this matter will remain a secret between them. The next day, Lagertha wants to travel with Ragnar to the lands of the West, but he refuses, telling her that he doesn't want to expose her to danger. After a few days, Ragnar, his men, and his brother Rollo begin their journey. At that time, Knut goes to Haraldsson and tells him what happened. Haraldsson tells him that Ragnar and his men will die at sea because they won't find any lands in the West. At sea, Ragnar uses the compass he has and sets a course for the West, and he and his men continue on their way until the ship is hit by a very strong storm. Here, Floki's skill in shipbuilding is demonstrated, as the ship weathers the storm and suffers no damage. The storm ends, and Ragnar and his men continue their journey safely. However, the sky's full of clouds, so Ragnar tries to use the sunstone to know the sun's location in the sky, and thereby determine the direction they should go. But Ragnar fails to locate the sun, and the men with him feel frustrated. One of them stands up and starts cursing Ragnar, accusing him of deceiving them and making them sacrifice their lives in pursuit of a delusion. Ragnar tells him to calm down and be quiet, but he doesn't listen to him. Ragnar continues to incite the rest of the men against him. Ragnar grabs his knife and kills him to prevent a mutiny among them. Ragnar asks Rollo to release the ravens from the cage and let them fly into the sky. Ragnar tells them that if these ravens do not return, it means there is land nearby, and if the ravens return to them, it means there is no land nearby. Ragnar and his men wait to see what will happen. Suddenly, they hear the sound of birds and at first think they are the ravens. They are very disappointed because they are now lost in the middle of the ocean. However, they discover that these are seagulls, which is evidence that there is land very close to them. They all get excited and start rowing with all their might until they see the land in front of them. On this land is a monastery full of monks. One of them sees the ship coming towards them, so he runs to the head monk and tells him that people are coming from the sea to attack them. The head monk gives orders to ring the alarm bells and lock all the doors. The monks hide inside the monastery until Ragnar and his men arrive. They storm the monastery, attack the monks, and kill them all. Ragnar finds one of the monks hiding, named Athelstan. Ragnar is surprised that Athelstan speaks their language and asks him not to kill him. Ragnar asks him how he speaks their language. Athelstan tells him that he used to travel a lot and learn the languages of different countries. Rollo comes and wants to kill him, but Ragnar stops him and tells him that he will take him with them and sell him as a slave, earning a lot of money from him. Afterwards, Ragnar and his men load all the treasures they found in the monastery and return with them to the ship. They take a large number of monks with them as slaves, including Athelstan, and return to their country. As soon as Ragnar and his men reach their village, they find people standing and waiting for them, celebrating them. They all chant Ragnar's name because he was true to his word with them and returned with the treasures of the West as he had promised them. Knut comes and informs Ragnar that King Haraldsson wants to see him. Ragnar takes his men, and they go to Haraldsson. Ragnar shows him all the treasures he brought with him and tells him that they seized these treasures easily and that the monastery they attacked had no protection of any kind. Haraldsson asks him how he was able to reach the lands of the West when many before him could not. Ragnar tells him he was just lucky, nothing more. It appears that Haraldsson is not convinced by his words, but he doesn't show it. Haraldsson tells Ragnar that all these treasures will be his, as punishment for them for disobeying his orders and going to the lands of the West without his permission. Ragnar asks him to reward him and his men because they risked their lives to bring him these treasures. Haraldson decides that each of them will take only one thing from the treasures before them. Haraldson asks Ragnar what he will take. Ragnar chooses to take Athelstan to be his slave. Haraldson mocks him and is surprised by his choice, but he agrees. Afterwards, Rollo is very upset about what happened and asks Ragnar why he handed over all the treasure to Haraldson. Ragnar tells him that if he hadn't done that, he would have killed them all. But he reassures him that they will go to the lands of the West again and will seize much more than the treasure they handed over to Haraldson. Afterwards, Ragnar returns to his home with Athelstan and introduces him to his wife and children. At night, Ragnar sits with Athelstan and learns from him that there are 4 kingdoms and that the monastery they attacked is part of a kingdom belonging to a king named Aelle. Ragnar asks him to teach him the English language, so that when he returns to the lands of the West, he can speak with the people he will meet there and understand their language. After a few days, Ragnar takes Athelstan and goes to Haraldson. He tells him that he learned from Athelstan that there is a village near the monastery he was in, and that this village has a larger monastery than the one they attacked, and therefore, of course, there will be many more treasures. Ragnar asks Haraldson to give him permission to travel to England. He tells him that when they return, they will hand over all the treasures they seize. Haraldson is convinced by Ragnar's words, but he stipulates that he take Knut with him. Ragnar agrees, leaves, and walks away. As soon as Ragnar leaves the place, Haraldson summons Knut and tells him that he must find out the method Ragnar uses to determine his way in the ocean, to be able to reach the lands of the West. Afterwards, Ragnar returns to his house and tells his wife that he will travel to England the next day, and that this time he will take her with him. This is because he has obtained permission from Haraldson, and therefore there will be no danger to their children during their absence. Moreover, he will have Athelstan be responsible for protecting their children because Ragnar now trusts him. The next day, Ragnar and his men begin their journey to England. As soon as they reach the shore, they find guards on the beach. Ragnar talks with the commander of the soldiers and tells him that they are a group of merchants. The commander says they must go with him and meet the king to allow them to practice trade on his land. Ragnar suspects this is a trap set for them and that as soon as they reach the king, they will be arrested. He and his men attack the commander and the soldiers with him, and a fierce battle breaks out between them, which Ragnar wins. And his men, but one soldier manages to escape from the battle. Ragnar deduces that this soldier will report them, and that surely other forces will come and attack them. Ragnar moves quickly and takes one of the English soldiers with him, forcing him to show them the way to the nearby village. When they get there, Ragnar decides to wait until the next day to attack the village. Rollo is surprised by his decision, but Ragnar tells him he will know the reason the next day. At the same time, the soldier who escaped from the battle goes to King Aelle and tells him everything that happened. King Aelle deduces that they are the group that attacked the monastery before, and it is clear he is angry with them. He gives orders to the army commander to attack Ragnar and his men and kill them all. The next day, Ragnar and his men stand and prepare to attack the village. Ragnar waits until he hears the monastery bells, and then he orders his men to move. When they reach the village, they find it empty and all the inhabitants gathered in the monastery. Ragnar is shown to be very clever, as he knew that the villagers were Christians, and so he waited until the next day, which is Sunday, when all the inhabitants would be gathered in the monastery to attend Mass. Ragnar storms the monastery with his men and tells the priest that he will not harm him, but on the condition that no one resists at all. The priest obeys his words and asks everyone present to stay in their places and not move. Afterwards, Ragnar and his men seize everything in the monastery and the entire village. While this is happening, Lagertha sees Knut attacking a house in the village, trying to assault the woman who owns the house. Lagertha tries to stop him, but he hits her and tries to assault her as well. Lagertha resists him, takes out a knife, and kills him. Then she goes to Ragnar and tells him what happened. Ragnar takes her with his men after they have plundered the village, and they all move towards the shore. There, they find the army commander waiting for them with a group of soldiers, ready to attack them. The army commander gives the order to begin the attack. The archers shoot a large volley of arrows at Ragnar and his men. Although Ragnar and his men are not used to these military tactics, Ragnar orders his men to gather their shields together, forming a large shield to protect them from the arrows being shot at them. Afterwards, they are able to repel the soldiers' attack, and a fierce battle ensues between them. A state of fear and terror spreads among the English soldiers due to the large number of casualties. The army commander returns to King Aelle and tells him that he has never seen people fight with such courage. The king gets angry at him and asks if he knows who they are. He tells him the army commander that he captured 2 of them, and these 2 were on the ship before the battle. However, he didn't understand anything from them because of the language they spoke, but he was able to learn that their leader's name is Ragnar. Afterwards, Ragnar and his men arrive in their country, and Haraldson himself is there to receive them. Ragnar shows him the treasures they seized and tells those present about the battle that took place between them and the king's forces, and how they were victorious. Haraldson asks them about Knut. Ragnar tells him that he killed him because he tried to assault his wife, Lagertha. Haraldson becomes angry and doesn't believe Ragnar's words. He orders his men to arrest him and imprison him on the charge of murdering Knut. Afterwards, Haraldson sits with Rollo alone and tells him that he will give him a large part of the treasure they returned with from England, and that he will marry him to his daughter in exchange for him betraying his brother Ragnar. Rollo agrees and tells him that he will do what he wants. The next day, Ragnar is tried before all the inhabitants, and Haraldson accuses Ragnar of killing Knut without reason. He says before everyone present that he has a witness to this. Rollo, Ragnar's brother, appears, and Haraldson asks him to give his testimony before all the people. Rollo says that he saw Ragnar killing Knut because he saw him assaulting his wife, Lagertha. Here, Haraldson is shocked because Rollo broke his promise to him and refused to testify against his brother. At night, Ragnar celebrates his acquittal from the murder charge with his family and the people of his village. Lagertha thanks Rollo for what he did for his brother, but she is surprised when Rollo tells her that he didn't do it for his brother, but for her, and only her. Afterwards, they are surprised by a group of bandits sent by Haraldson to finish off Ragnar and his men. But Ragnar and his men engage them in a fierce battle and kill them all. The next day, Haraldson himself attacks Ragnar's village with his forces and kills everyone in it. At that time, Ragnar is in the forest hunting and hears the screams of the villagers. He quickly returns to the village and attacks Haraldson's men, but they outnumber him. Ragnar suffers serious injuries, but he endures and returns to his house. He manages to help Lagertha, their children, and Athelstan escape, telling them to get in the boat and flee to the sea quickly. Afterwards, Haraldsson reaches Ragnar's house. Ragnar is unable to stand on his feet due to his injuries. He turns to Haraldsson and admits that he deserves to die. He pretends to beg for forgiveness from the gods. Suddenly, Ragnar gets up quickly, attacks one of Haraldsson's men, kills him, runs to his horse, mounts it, and escapes from the place quickly. At that moment, Lagertha arrives. Her son, her daughter, and Athelstan reach the boat. They all get in and escape to the sea. They see their village after Haraldsson's men have killed all its inhabitants and also burned all the houses in it. At that time, Ragnar keeps running from Haraldsson's men, gets off his horse, crosses to the other side of the river, and walks in the forest until he reaches the top of the mountain. There, he sees his family in the boat. Ragnar is about to lose consciousness, so he throws himself into the sea. Athelstan jumps in after him into the water and manages to save him and brings them onto the boat. Afterwards, they all go to Floki's house. As soon as they arrive there, they start treating Ragnar's injury. At that time, Haraldsson is sitting in his house with his wife Siggy and daughter Thiri. A king from the Viking kings in Sweden enters, and his name is Björn. Siggy is very shocked when she learns the news because Björn is much older than her, but she agrees to marry Björn because she cannot object to her father's decision. At night, Siggy argues with Haraldsson and accuses him of not caring about his daughter. Haraldsson tells her that he is concerned about her future and says that Björn has a very large kingdom, and that their daughter's marriage to him will be an alliance between them and him, providing them with strength and protection, and will also ensure the continuation of his lineage in the rule of the Vikings. The days pass, and at the end of the year is the wedding day of Thiri and Björn. Rollo goes and attends the wedding. As soon as Haraldsson sees him, he asks him why he came. Rollo tells him that he knows his men are watching him to find Ragnar's location. Rollo asked Haraldsson to have his men stop watching him because he will not find Ragnar's location no matter what happens, simply because Ragnar is dead. Haraldsson asks him to swear to this. Rollo refuses to swear because he did not see his brother's body with his own eyes, but he looked for him everywhere for the past months and couldn't find him. This means that Ragnar and his family are dead. Rollo asks Haraldsson to let him work with him and be one of his men, because he wants to go back to fighting again. Haraldsson agrees and asks him to get ready because he will participate with the rest of the men in an upcoming raid. However, it becomes clear that Haraldsson is deceiving Rollo, because the next day he has his men arrest him, tie him up, and torture him. Haraldsson goes to him and tells him that it's hard to trust him after he broke his promise during Ragnar's trial. He asks him again about his brother Ragnar's location, but Rollo doesn't answer him, so he tortures him himself to make him confess. At the same time, one of Ragnar's men, whose name is Thorstein, goes to visit Ragnar at Floki's house and tells him that he guessed he was still alive and would surely be hiding at Floki's, because no one knows the location of Floki's house except the three of them. Thorstein is happy that Ragnar is starting to regain his health again. Thorstein tells Ragnar that Haraldsson is watching all their men, and that he managed to escape from them, and came to inform him that Haraldsson has captured his brother Rollo and is torturing him to find out his location. Ragnar asks Floki to go to Haraldsson and tell him that Ragnar challenges him to a duel in front of all the people. He tells him that Haraldsson will not be able to refuse because his prestige would be damaged in front of his people. Indeed, Floki goes to Haraldsson and delivers Ragnar's message. Haraldsson accepts the challenge, seeing it as a good opportunity to kill Ragnar and get rid of him. The day of the duel arrives. Ragnar, still affected by his injuries, comes. Haraldsson comes and stands before Ragnar. Then each of them takes a shield and a sword, and the duel begins. It appears that Haraldsson still possesses high combat skills despite his old age. Ragnar's injuries affect him during the fight, making his movements slow. The fight between Ragnar and Haraldsson is so fierce that Ragnar's sword breaks. Each of them chooses another weapon to continue. Both of them suffer serious injuries, and it seems that Haraldsson is the one who will win the battle, but Ragnar manages to strike Haraldsson in the back with a fatal blow. Haraldsson falls to the ground, and Ragnar finishes him off. Siggy runs to Haraldsson and holds his hand to stop the bleeding, but he stops her and tells her that this is his fate, and he is content with it, and that he is going to his two sons in heaven. As soon as Haraldsson dies, Siggy runs and kills Björn, her daughter's husband, whom her father forced her to marry. Then Siggy kneels before Ragnar and hails his name as the new king. The villagers follow her and chant Ragnar's name. Then Ragnar sits on the throne, and the Viking warriors come and swear their loyalty and obedience to him. Rollo stands before Ragnar to take the oath, but Ragnar stops him. He tells him that he doesn't need to swear allegiance to him. He tells him that the torture he endured for his sake is the greatest proof of his loyalty. But Rollo refuses and insists on swearing his loyalty to his brother, pledging to protect him and his family from any danger. Then, Ragnar stands before everyone and announces his first decision, which is to continue their raids on the lands of the West. The next day, Ragnar holds a grand funeral for Haraldsson. Athelstan is surprised by what Ragnar is doing, but he tells him that Haraldsson was a great warrior and that he deserves this funeral. Then Ragnar learns from his wife that she is pregnant. He is happy and tells her that he is sure that she will give birth to a boy. At that time, Siggy is with her daughter Thierry at home, collecting their gold and jewelry to leave the village. This is because they are afraid that Ragnar will kill them, as any new king does to the family of the old king. Suddenly, Rollo enters. Siggy is scared and thinks that Ragnar has already ordered their death, but Rollo reassures her and tells her that this has not happened. He asks her not to leave the village. She tells him that she cannot stay because the villagers will treat her and her daughter badly. Rollo offers to marry her, and he will provide protection for her and her daughter. She is surprised and does not answer him. After a period, Ragnar and his men move with 3 ships towards the lands of the West. The news reaches King Ella in England, and he orders his army commander to prepare to face Ragnar and his men. However, he is shocked when the army commander tells him that they will not be able to face the Viking warriors because they are very strong fighters and are not afraid of death. King Aella tells him that he is a coward and is no longer fit to be the army commander. He takes him and goes with him to a pit full of poisonous snakes and orders his men to throw him into it. Then King Aelle orders all his men to prepare to defend their country against the attacks of Ragnar and his men. The next day, Lord Ethelwulf, King Aelle's brother, arrives and is greeted by the king with a great welcome. We learn that Lord Ethelwulf is the one who will lead his brother King Aelle's army in his war against the Viking warriors. 2 days later, Ragnar and his men arrive at the kingdom. They draw their weapons and prepare for battle with the English army. Lord Ethelwulf is standing with his forces, watching from a hilltop. The Lord orders his forces to make a camp for them in a place near Ragnar and his men, in the hope that he can surprise Ragnar and his men as soon as they begin their attack on the kingdom. At the same time, Ragnar sees the English forces and knows that they are watching them. His brother Rollo wants them to attack them immediately and surprise them, but Ragnar tells him that he does not want to lose many soldiers in the battle and that he will wait for the right moment to attack. Night comes, and Ragnar's brilliance in war is shown. He and his men sneak into the English army's camp and attack them while they are sleeping. They take advantage of the element of surprise and are able to kill a large number of them. They capture Lord Ethelwulf. This news reaches King Aelle, who is at the height of his fury over his brother's defeat. One of his advisors suggests that they fight the Vikings to the last drop of blood, But one of the knights suggests that they pay Ragnar and his men the money they want, because they are just a group of thieves and have no ambitions to occupy the lands. The king tells them that he will think about it and will get back to them the next day. But the next day, Ragnar and his men go with Lord Aethelwulf to King Alle's castle. One of the knights comes out and tells Ragnar that King Alle wants to meet their leader, and that he is willing to pay them money in exchange for them freeing his brother from captivity. He takes his men and leaves. As soon as Ragnar returns to the camp, Rollo suggests that they attack King Alle's castle, especially since they are now in their weakest state. But Ragnar tells him that he wants to meet King Alle and talk with him to learn more details about kings, their lives, and the way they behave in situations like this. Besides, King Alle will not be able to harm them because they are holding his brother. Afterwards, Ragnar goes with a large number of his men to the king. King Alle is forced to receive them in a good way. He welcomes them and prepares a large feast for them before they talk about anything. Afterwards, King Alle asks Ragnar about his demands in exchange for handing over his brother, and for him and his men to stay away from the kingdom. Ragnar asks him for 900 kilograms of gold and silver. King Alle agrees and asks Ragnar to give him a deadline so that he can collect this amount of gold and silver for him. He asks him that this period be a truce period and that no battles take place. Ragnar agrees to the king's request and takes his men back to the camp. In the Viking village, Siggy goes to Lagertha and asks to be her servant in exchange for providing protection for her and her daughter. Lagertha treats her with respect and agrees to her request, telling her that she and her daughter will be under her protection and that she will never treat them as servants. After a few days, King Aelys sends boxes of gold and silver to Ragnar and his men, but Ragnar discovers that it is a trick from the king because the boxes are empty. A large group of English soldiers appears and attacks him and his men. It becomes clear that he had anticipated something like this because he had prepared defensive traps around the camp, and was able to repel the attack of the English soldiers, killing a very large number of them. A state of chaos ensues in the ranks of the English soldiers, so Ragnar and his men attack them, and a very strong battle breaks out between them. Ragnar and his men kill all the soldiers who attack them. Afterwards, the battle ends with the victory of the Viking warriors. Ragnar kills Lord Aethelwulf and sends his body on a horse to his brother, King Alle. Alle realizes that he will not be able to defeat Ragnar, so he sends him a cart with the boxes of gold and silver he had requested. Afterwards, King Alle stands and watches Ragnar as he leaves the kingdom with his ships. But King Alle swears that he will not leave Ragnar and that the day will come when he will take revenge on him and kill him. At that time, Lagertha loses the child she was pregnant with. Siggy enters and sees her bleeding. She takes her in her arms and comforts her. When Ragnar returns to the village, he appears deeply saddened by the death of his child. He is sitting alone. Athelstan enters, having grown his hair and beard, and has now become one of the villagers. Ragnar tells Athelstan that he will take his family and travel to the temple of the priests, which he visits every 9 years. This is a Viking custom to thank the gods and offer them sacrifices. Ragnar is surprised that the gods have granted him kingship and power, but have deprived him of his unborn son. There, Athelstan is surprised by what they are doing. Moreover, he finds many people from the Viking peoples from everywhere. Lagertha asks the gods to let her conceive a boy and to accept her offerings and the sacrifice she will make. Athelstan sees that there are 3 places designated for offerings. He learns from Ragnar that the first place is for pigs, the second for sheep, and the third is for the chosen humans who will sacrifice their lives as offerings to the gods. Afterwards, Lagertha tells Ragnar that the king named Horik will attend the festival. Ragnar tells her that he himself wants to meet King Horik because he is one of the greatest Viking kings. The next day, King Horik arrives at the temple and is met by Ragnar, who tells him that he has been hearing stories of his struggles since he was young. Horik tells him that he has also heard about his successes in the lands of the West. Here, Ragnar shows his loyalty and obedience to King Horik and asks him to form an alliance together to attack the lands of the West with a large army. It appears that Ragnar intends to take a large kingdom with many treasures and riches called France. King Horik agrees to unite with Ragnar to attack the lands of the West and expand their presence in Europe. However, Horik asks Ragnar to carry out a mission for him to prove his loyalty. He tells him that a ruler named Jarl Borg is trying to seize part of his kingdom's lands. Horik asks Ragnar to be his messenger to King Borg, to negotiate with him, and to resolve the dispute between them. Horik promises him that if he succeeds in this mission, he will be eternally indebted to him. A few days later, Ragnar, his son Bjorn, his brother Rollo, and a group of his men arrive at King Borg's fortress. However, Borg receives them very poorly, leaving them in the cold for a while and eating. After he finishes eating, he asks them to come closer to the fire to warm up. Borg knows that they have come from King Horik to negotiate with him. He tells them that they are wasting their time and that he will not give up his claim to his land from Horik. Ragnar tells him that King Horik seeks peace and that they can reach an agreement that ends the dispute between them. Borg asks him his name, and he says his name is Ragnar. As soon as Borg learns that he is standing before Ragnar, the brave warrior who conquered the West, he orders his men to give him new clothes, and not just Ragnar, but him and his men, to feed them and to improve their hospitality. Borg asks Ragnar to rest with his men from the fatigue of the journey and to continue their conversation the next day. At that time, Lagertha is at home, and she appears tired. We learn that Lagertha has not eaten for 3 days because she is anxious and afraid. Because she has been having nightmares for several days. Siggy suggests that she go to the seer and tell him what is happening with her. The next day, Ragnar tells Borg that King Horik is willing to pay money in exchange for him, giving up his claim to the land. Borg says that his land is priceless, but he offers Ragnar that he could lease the land to Horik. Rollo interjects in the conversation and agrees with Borg's suggestion, but Ragnar cuts him off and tells Borg that he does not have the authority to make a decision on this matter. Borg suggests that they send a messenger to Horik and ask for his opinion. Ragnar agrees to this suggestion, and they decide to send Floki to Horik to find out his opinion and bring back the answer. Then Borg decides to invite Ragnar on a trip to the beautiful places in his kingdom, but he asks Ragnar to leave one of his men with him as a guarantee that he will not be deceived. Ragnar decides to leave his brother Rollo with him. At that time, Lagertha goes to the seer and tells him about the nightmares she is having. The seer tells her that her husband Ragnar is in danger, but the danger is not to his life, but rather the danger is from the magic he will be exposed to. The seer refuses to say anything more and tell her what will happen to her husband. Exactly. So she returns to her house, confused and worried about her husband. At that time, Ragnar begins his journey with his men in Borg's kingdom. Borg takes advantage of Ragnar's absence and sits with Rollo. Borg tells Rollo his story with his brother, saying that after their father, the king, died, the people chose Borg to be the one to rule. On the day of his inauguration, his brother put poison in the drink he was to have during the celebration, and it was Borg's wife who drank from his cup and died. At that time, Borg discovered the hatred and jealousy inside his brother, so he decided to kill him and avenge his wife. From this story, it is implied that Borg is hinting that his brother Ragnar might betray him. He tells him that he and his brother have a very strong relationship, and it is impossible for any dispute to arise between them. Borg provokes him and tells him that he is not important and has no importance to his brother. And the proof of that is that he has heard of Ragnar, the great warrior who conquered the lands of the West, but he has never heard the name Rollo before at all. At that time, 2 of Ragnar's men are spying on a girl while she is bathing in the river, but her guards beat them. He wakes them up to what they are doing. He tells them that they are here with their leader Ragnar as guests of King Borg. It turns out that she is a princess named Aslaug, and she tells them that the leader Ragnar must apologize to her personally for what they did. Ragnar's men return to his tent and tell him what happened. Ragnar agrees to apologize to Aslaug and asks them to go back to her and invite her to his tent. Aslaug accepts Ragnar's invitation and goes to him. He welcomes her and apologizes for what happened with his men. It appears that a mutual admiration has developed between them. Ragnar takes the opportunity and invites her to share his journey, and she agrees. At the same time, in the Viking village, Lagertha tells Siggy about what the seer said, but she notices that Siggy is tired and learns that she was visiting her cousin, whose young son died of a fever. It appears that Siggy has been infected and becomes sicker, losing consciousness. It seems that Siggy has transmitted the infection to everyone around her, and the illness that Siggy has spreads throughout the village, infecting many, including Theory, Siggy's daughter. The bodies of the dead are burned so that the infection does not spread further, but unfortunately, Athelstan and Gyda, Lagertha's daughter, get sick. Lagertha stays by their side, serving and caring for them. Then she offers a sacrifice to the god for them to recover. Then people start to recover from the illness, and Athelstan recovers too, but unfortunately, Gyda dies. Lagertha is sad because of her daughter's death, and burns her body with her own hands, full of sorrow inside. At that time, Ragnar and Aslaug get closer during the journey. Bjorn, Ragnar's son, is annoyed by what his father is doing with Aslaug and tells him that he hates him because he is cheating on his mother with Aslaug. Ragnar tells him that what happened was just a fling and nothing more, and that he loves Lagertha and will never leave her. He promises that from this moment on, He will stay away from Aslaug for good. Night comes, and Aslaug goes to Ragnar and tries to get close to him, but he rejects her and asks her to go back to her bed. The next day, Aslaug goes to Ragnar and tells him that she is pregnant with his child. She leaves and walks away. It appears that Ragnar is surprised by what is happening, but at the same time, he is happy with the news. At the same time, Floki reaches King Horik. As soon as Horik sees him, he deduces that he has refused to sell his land. Horik refuses to listen to the message that Floki came to deliver. Horik tells Floki that he is sure that Ragnar will act and will know how to solve the problem. Afterwards, Floki returns to Borg to inform him of Horik's response. Ragnar has finished his journey and returned to Borg's house. At night, they all gather for dinner. Borg asks Floki about Horik's decision. Floki tells him that Horik refused to listen to him, and that he insists that Borg set a price for the land, and he will buy it. Borg tells Ragnar that his mission has failed, and that he can take his men and leave the next day unless Ragnar is willing to renounce his loyalty to Horik. Ragnar looks at him, remains silent, and does not answer him. At night, Ragnar goes to Aslaug's room and places his hand on her stomach. It is clear that he is eager to have a new son. At the same time, Borg sits with Rollo and tells him that he has no choice but to go to war with Horik to reclaim his land. Borg says that Ragnar will not support him in this war and will be on Horik's side. Borg offers Rollo to unite against Ragnar and Horik, promising him that he will be his partner in the new kingdom. Thus, greed and the dream of power take hold of Rollo, and he actually begins to dream of becoming a king. He accepts Borg's offer to fight with him against his brother Ragnar. This was the end of the first season of the series. Hope you liked it.